From TV to social media to our community, it's easy to see that people are excited about the holiday season. There's a sense of cheer everywhere you turn. And as followers of Jesus, there's a great amount of excitement and joy because Christmas is a time for us to remember the birth of our Savior, Jesus. So, what's your favorite thing about the holiday season? Is it the presents, the cookies, the time with family, the long break from school? What's the one thing about the Christmas season that you look forward to the most every single year? Is it when the first snow falls on the mountains that surround our valley? Is it when the tree is fully decorated? When we cozy up to watch our favorite holiday movie? When our family from out of town finally arrives? That's when we experience the feeling everyone seems to be talking about at Christmas. Joy. Okay, maybe joy isn't a word that you use very often. In fact, outside of the Christmas season, you probably wouldn't even say it at all. If you're like me, you'd probably describe it as happiness instead. But can I let you in on a little secret? Happiness and joy may feel similar, but they're actually two different things. Happiness is what we feel in response to something. It's a reaction to our circumstances. When you get the present that you want for Christmas, you're happy. When you get the best grade in class, you're happy. When your parents let you hang out with your friends later than usual over the holiday break, you're happy. And that kind of happiness isn't a bad thing. It's something I want all of us to feel a little more of, especially at Christmas time. But when we experience happiness, it's only for a moment. It's the result of something good that has happened. That means that when things change, our happiness usually does as well. But joy is different. Joy is an attitude we can have no matter what our circumstances are. Sure, you can experience joy in the same way as happiness. When something good happens, of course, you can be joyful about it. But what's cool about joy is that you can also experience it even when good stuff doesn't happen. It's deeper, more lasting of a feeling that goes with us no matter what's going on around us. I don't know about you, but that definitely sounds like something that I want in my life. And if you're anything like me, when you hear something like joy is possible, you'll do anything you can to try and find it. Maybe you look for joy in a really cool experience, a fun vacation, a new location to make TikToks, a cool place to hang out with your friends. That kind of stuff can bring a little joy. Or maybe it's an answered prayer or a circumstance that works out just the way you want it. When everything feels like it's falling into place in life or we get the good news we're hoping for, that can bring some joy our way. We may look for joy in all these things, but they actually bring moments of happiness. And at the end of the day, those moments pass and feelings of happiness change. And just like that, we're back to where we started. So what do we do? If happiness isn't enough to keep us going when things get tough, how do we find the one thing that will help us no matter what? Where do we find real, lasting joy? Well, to get our answer, I want to look back at one of the most joyful times on earth, the birth of Jesus. It's what we count down to and celebrate every year at Christmas. His arrival made everything different, including the way that we experience joy. Jesus changed everything. Because the birth of Jesus was such a big deal back then, you'd think that some of the first people that would have heard about it would have been kings, religious leaders, or super important people that are in the culture where Jesus was born. But in reality, it was actually a group of shepherds who got the good news first. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because shepherds were people who took care of sheep. And even though that was a really difficult job, in Jesus' culture, at that time, shepherds weren't considered to be all that important. In fact, a lot of people looked down on them and saw them as less than. So you can imagine everyone's surprise, including the shepherds themselves, when angels showed up to tell them about the birth of Jesus. And here's what the angels said to the shepherds. The angels could have said anything about the birth of Jesus, but notice what they said. I bring you good news that cause great joy for all the people. In other words, Jesus' birth brought something great to the world, joy. And not just joy that some people can experience, but joy for all people to experience. This is so important because the shepherds especially needed to hear this message. While the rest of the world might have thought that the joy wouldn't have been for people like them, the angels reminded them that it was definitely for them. In fact, it was for everyone. And this is exactly what we can do too. If we want to know where real and lasting joy is, the angels told us where to look: in Jesus. If we want to experience that joy for ourselves, we have to take a tip from the shepherds and go look for it. Go experience it. Go find it in knowing Jesus. See, because of Jesus, there's always joy. Now, maybe you're thinking, I'm sure that's easy for some people, but you have no idea what I'm going through right now. If you did, then you would know that joy is just not possible. And if that's how you feel, I want you to know that I'm sorry for what you're experiencing. And in fact, I'd love for you to consider sharing with your small group leader this week at the Landing. Let them encourage and support you through it. That's why we created that to happen here at Hope. But I also want you to know that joy is still possible for you. I want you to know that it is because of Jesus. When Jesus was alive on earth, he experienced so much suffering and pain. Jesus was ultimately arrested, beaten, and killed on a cross. That path was anything but joyful. But Jesus chose it because he knew doing so would bring joy into the world. Take a look at how the writer of Hebrews put it. Jesus knew what was coming for him. Jesus knew that the cross meant the end of his physical life on earth, but he still chose to walk the hard road towards it. Why? Because of the joy that he knew was on the other side for both him and us. Because of Jesus, there is always joy. Joy comes from understanding what God has done for us through Jesus. It's found in the gift of having a relationship with him. It's something that we can find when we get to know Jesus and spend time with him. It'll show up in the most unexpected places and go with us even when we experience something completely terrible. It's one thing we can always count on finding when we look for it in Jesus, because knowing Jesus changes everything. So my question for you today is this: what would it look like for you to go to Jesus for joy? Just like the shepherds did. What would it look like for you to look for an experience of joy in Jesus? Here are 3 things that can help us to look for that joy. The first one is remember that God will use everything for good, even if the situation isn't. No matter what we're going through, we can have joy knowing that the one who has control over everything is using everything for good. Now, I know a lot of us are going through some really hard situations right now, and it might feel impossible that anything good could ever come from that. But that's the awesome part about God. We might not be able to see how God is using our situation right now in a way that's good. It may take weeks, months, or even years to see that good. But God promises to work for your good in every situation. To remind yourself of this, make your lock screen or write it down on a mirror or make it on your phone and put it up where you can see it every day. And second, remember that God promises to make everything right in the end. We can have joy because we know how the story ends. We're living in a story that will have a happy ending. And this is only the beginning. The story that God is writing for your life may feel really hard or broken or painful right now. Maybe it feels like things aren't supposed to be this way. And chances are parts of your story feel that way in the future too. When we go through things that are difficult, it's okay to ask questions about whatever it is we're dealing with. And by asking questions, we can actually get to know God more, which can help us remember that in the end, God will make everything right. And third, remember to look for joy. If we want to experience that joy for ourselves, we have to do what the shepherds did and go look for it. Go experience it. Go find it in spending time with and getting to know God more. Maybe it's taking time to pray when you need a little more joy in your life. Or maybe it's even praying a prayer of thanks when you feel joy. Maybe it's spending time with people who love and believe in Jesus too, like your small group. Or maybe it's reading more about Jesus in places like the book of Luke, where you can discover more about what and where this Christmas stuff all started. Whatever it is, go commit yourself to look for that joy. Remember, because of Jesus, there's always joy, and that joy is something I hope you experience this Christmas season and beyond. One way that you can choose to experience joy is to share it with other people. Next week, we're going to be going over something special because I don't want you guys to pack up your faith with your Christmas decorations. Jesus coming to earth is the best news, and I want us to remember that year round. That's the whole reason we even began counting down to Christmas.